Hello everyone, this video is going to focus on auditing, and I'm going to do a little bit about user accounts control, UAC control as well. But auditing is a very powerful tool that we have, Windows 10, that allows us to keep track of certain events that happen on the computer. A lot of times you're going to hear experienced IT people say, well, did you check the logs? When you come up with that to them and say, hey, this is happening and I don't know what's going on. And that's because a lot of times we set up specific events to be audited so that they create logs automatically so we can see things that have occurred on the system. So I'm going to give you an example of what I mean, and then I strongly encourage you to take a look at all the different things that can be audited. So you get a sense for the kinds of things that we can automatically get information from with our machine. So first, if we go down to the advanced audit policy up here in local policy and advanced policy, they do the same thing, but the advanced audit policy gives us a lot more detail, granular detail of the kinds of things we can audit. So for example, if we go to the account logon audit system section, we can check and verify and log audit, if you will, some of these different things. Like, for example, credential validation. What this means is login validation. So when I try and use my password to log into the system, I can have the system log these events as they occur, whether they are successful or not. So let's open up this credential validation, and these are the things that I can check. I can configure it to actually check, because right now, by default, it doesn't look to see if we are successful or not successful in logging in to our accounts. We're not keeping track of that. If I want to do that, I select configure, and then I can select whether I want to see all the successful logins, all the failed logins, or both. I can do both. Now, one thing about auditing is that you can generate a lot of logs and a lot of information. The system already does. The system already has thousands of pieces of information that it stores every time it just boots up. So we don't want to overwhelm ourselves with too much data. We only want to audit the things that we are going to be interested in, things that matter to us. And for example, a login failure might matter to us. If we have a ton of login failures, that tells us one of a few things. One, our employees need some help remembering their passwords. Two, we need to rethink our password policies because they might be too complicated for people logging in and out all day long. Or three, maybe someone's trying to log into something they shouldn't. Well, any of those situations, if we are auditing the failures of logins, we can go and check and see who is logging in or who is failing to log in to these machines. So I'll show you how we do that. So I've now configured audit credential validation for failure, meaning if I fail to log in, it's going to flag that. It's going to put that up as an event in our event viewer. So let's see how that works. I go, okay, I'll close out the security policy, and let's first get to computer management till we can get to the event viewer. A couple weeks ago when we talked about the computer management, we mentioned the event viewer, but we didn't go into a lot of detail. So inside the event viewer, there are a ton of different areas that have logs. Application logs, for example, will tell you all sorts of information or possibly errors about specific applications that have run. These errors, I'm going to almost guarantee, are based, I haven't activated my virtual machine yet, so every time it runs the activation program, it fails because it's not activated. So that's information, right? If we want to know what's going on with our computer, we come into the event viewer, look at the logs, and we can see what's going on. And it doesn't always have to be an error. As you can see, there's a lot of just plain information, things successfully logging on or not logging on, depending on the log. If we go over to the security log, you'll notice it got cleared out recently because there was a ton in here and I didn't want you to have to sift through them all. We have some security successes, some audit successes for specific actions. Oops, I meant to single click that. System audit policy was changed. Really? Maybe it was that auditing policy that I just changed, right? So the system audit policy changed is one of those security logs that's going to happen. So now, see how right now, this is all that's here, just the 3 of these. I'm going to log out and log back in. But this time when I do that, I'm going to purposely try and use the wrong password, or just simply not all of it. Told me it was incorrect. I need to try again. So now I'll try again with my real password. And hey, there we go. We're logged in. But because I had it set to audit this particular behavior, if I go to my event viewer now, I should see in Windows Security, there we go. I should see the audit failure. It knew that something happened because it was listening for it. And when it found it, it then published the event. Now, down here, this might be a little hard to read sometimes. It doesn't look like there's a lot of good information here. It's basically saying the computer attempted to validate the credentials for an account. Someone tried to log in. If I go to details, this is going to give me a slightly nicer view of what happened. And you can see specifically user X was the target on this machine, and he wasn't able to log in. So someone tried to log in to the user X account on this machine and failed, is what this event is telling us. So you can imagine there's a lot of interesting things you can do with auditing to get information that you might need. So that's going to be the one example that I'm going to have for you here. The textbook actually has you do a different one as part of your activity. I can't remember which activity off the top of my head. I think maybe activity 6.5 or something like that, where you're going to be auditing something else. But get used to this. Give this a try and practice setting up some audits, and then check to make sure that you successfully enabled the audit and that they were correctly finding the events that occur. The other thing I wanted to mention in this video is user accounts control. User accounts control can be gotten to in the control panels as well as in local policies. Again, up in our system security, administrative tools was not where I wanted to go. Sorry about that. Where I meant to go was right here, change user account control settings. So if I click on that, this brings us to the UAC control panel. Now, this is the simple way of doing it. If you want to be more granular and have specific actions that you want to be taken, you would go to local security policy and you would make changes there. But here, we can just move this slider around to specify how often or how intrusive we want UAC to be. So the default setting is up here, basically saying, don't notify me when I make changes to Windows settings, things like backgrounds and themes and stuff like that. But for any changes to the system, then it wants you to notify. I can bring that down and then don't notify me, don't dim the desktop, in other words, when I make changes. Instead of before, it would actually only when apps try to make changes. See, down here it's do not dim, or just simply never notify me. So if apps try and do things, don't tell me. If I make changes, don't tell me. Just basically never tell me. Or you can go to the other extreme and make sure they always tell you. So the other thing I want to talk about in this video is user account control. User account control can either be changed, if you will, at the local group. Oh, dear God. The other thing I want to talk about in this video is user account control settings. User account control settings can be changed in the local policy if you want granular control, very specific things that you want to change it to, or you can just go to control panel where there's a user account control panel. That sounded weird, but that is what it is. If I go to system and security, in security and maintenance, you can change user account control settings. So if I click on here, these are the settings that you can control. It's pretty broad. You can move the slider up and down to either have more notifications, more intrusion, or less. medium hard basically is where it starts, basically to notifying me when apps try to make changes. Don't notify me when I make changes, but when apps try and make changes, then let me know. I can bring that down a little bit, make it a little bit less intrusive. Notify me when apps try to make changes, but don't dim the desktop. You know how it will dim the desktop and pop up with the UAC alert? Well, if I have it down here, it's not going to do that. It's still not going to notify me when I make changes, but it'll notify me if apps try and make changes. All the way down at the bottom, simply don't tell me, I don't care. That's not the most secure way of doing it. The reason we have UAC is to inform you if something is happening to your computer that you don't know about. That's what it was intended to be. In Windows Vista, it was really intrusive and became a problem. It got a bad rap and no one wanted to use it. But really, it was intended to inform you if something was trying to change your system without you specifically saying it was okay. That's what UAC is for. And so this is the simplest place to go and make changes to it. Again, in local policy, in local computer policy, you may go in and do more granular changes to UAC about how it pops up, when it prompts, what it prompts for. But usually this is what when most people want to make changes, they mostly want it turned off or lessened. And this is where you would go to do that.